For the longest time, Democrats and Republicans, for most of my life, have really had pretty much the same foreign policy. It's really a worship of the state. It's what it's always been. Ours has looked different than theirs, but we always trusted the FBI. I wanted to work for the FBI when I was a kid. Oh my gosh, the FBI. I didn't know it was the Stasi, or at least it was turning that way. I had no idea. We had no idea about these things. And Trump comes in, and like you mentioned, he's not some hardcore righty. He's a fairly moderate guy when you look at his views, but he has a very different view on foreign policy. And so when you think about foreign policy, think about, look, we can just make it about Ukraine. It doesn't really matter what you think about that. The amount of money, taxpayer money, it goes from the taxpayer, it goes into the government. The government writes gigantic checks of your money to the defense contractors. The defense contractors get paid hugely to continue that war without end. The defense contractors also take that very same money and hand it right back to the politician who stole it from you. And now all this stuff seems to be working in a great cycle. And now when you tie in the finance giants who they've already promised big fat taxpayer funded checks to rebuild, of course, when the whole thing's done, what you finally wake up and figure out is the evil demons who run the country look at all of us like just one big tax farm so they can stay in power, so they can have their steak dinners, so all this stuff can work out. And that Bush-Cheney wing, they were the freaking worst about all that stuff. They were awful about all that. And Trump challenging that, I will always believe Trump challenging that is the reason they're trying to murder him so bad, because that is the most money. You follow the money, there's your answer.
I think you've got to be right. By the way, you served in the Marine Corps during that period. You did the patriotic thing. Now they hate you. But it's just, it doesn't make any sense otherwise, because here you have Dick Cheney and Philip Zelikow, the guy who ran the 9/11 Commission, endorsing the administration that armed the Taliban. So that doesn't make any sense. If you were the leader of the war on terror, as Cheney was, or Philip Zelikow was, or Bob Zoellick was, you hate the Taliban. That's what you told us. How could you possibly endorse the Biden-Harris administration, which just armed the Taliban? It's now the best armed army in the region, thanks to the Biden-Harris administration, which you're now for. So it actually wasn't about fighting a global war on terror. Obviously, it's about keeping your crimes hidden, and you're worried that if Trump gets elected, he might just be crazy enough to declassify the documents that show what you've been doing for the last 25 years. I don't see any other explanation. I agree with you standing up and cheering. That is right.
No, look, what we're missing, and this happens to so many countries. Sorry, Tucker, I'm going to filibuster for a second. Take your time.
Dude, go crazy.
So what's happening in this country right now is what's happened to almost every single country in the history of the world, where you get far enough away from your founding, the people who lead the country will lose a sense of duty to the country, and it just becomes about them. Look, I could point to America's history, the Battle of Cheney. Any historians here? The Second Punic War, Hannibal, you've heard of him. He fights the Romans. He ends up wiping out a Roman army. A fascinating story about the Roman army Hannibal wipes out in Italy is he takes out a huge chunk of the Roman Senate. Wait a minute. Senators on the battlefield dying beside the peasants? Yes, that's how nations are supposed to operate, because the elite don't live on private jets and in steakhouses. If there was a war to be fought, you pick up your sword and you go die right next to the construction worker. That's how it's supposed to work. But if you look at that towards the end of Rome and where we are now, our leaders never go die, and their kids never go die. You mentioned Republicans.
Second, you were in the Marine Corps enlisted during the war on terror. Was Liz Cheney with you?
You know, I not only didn't see Liz Cheney with me, I didn't happen to see Mitt Romney or any one of his 57 kids. And Mitt Romney to this day wants to invade every single place on the planet. And again, I'm fine with differences on foreign policy, but I know what it's like to sit there and watch some kid hug his dad on the tarmac and say, "Daddy, don't go. Daddy, don't go." And to know that these scumbags in DC constantly send our guys, our men and women, to go do this without an ounce of duty to send themselves or their kids along makes me freaking sick. And it's because they don't have a sense of duty. We have gotten so far from where we are. Our leaders now, they're just a bunch of bank robbers looting the treasury instead of people who see themselves as what they should see themselves as the knights protecting Western civilization. That's why they've sent the FBI after so many American citizens. They've slowly turned their guns inward, because now when these people wake up in the morning and when they go to sleep at night, they think the enemy is you. They don't stress about China, they don't stress about Russia, they don't stress about terror, they certainly don't stress about the newest rapist dirtball that they hauled into this country across the border. They don't care about your cat that got eaten in Ohio. They don't care about any of that stuff. They wake up and they think about you with your rights, and you want your freedom of speech, and you probably love guns too, and you're probably gonna hold them to account if they continue to take a steaming dump on the country. That's why they flooded this country with illegals, and that's why they sent the FBI after school board moms.
So